Good afternoon and welcome back to the second part of the presentation on the healthcare waste management. Now, it's a very, it's a little disappointing, not so much for me because I know you're there, but more for the experts because they feel that they're probably just teaching us or each other. So we would like to request you to kindly please phone in and ask your questions. I would also like the regional directors to kindly inform us how many students are attending the teleconferencing. You can send us a fax maybe, or you can also call us up. Now I would first request our expert Dr. Anne Matthews to start her presentation and tell us about the management of sharps, which I think is very, very important in all the departments and across all disciplines in a hospital or nursing home or any healthcare setup, whether it is a primary healthcare setup or a tertiary hospital. And Dr. Anne Matthews.
So we'll continue with our waste management. Sharps are very dangerous. I think of all categories of waste, they are the highest risk. Any documented transmission of infection in healthcare personnel has been from sharps.
Yeah.
Why has he gone back?
Oh.
So it is very important how you have to go back to my.
Okay, I think actually there's a slight problem with the PowerPoint presentation because it just skipped, so we just give 2 minutes to Dr. Matthews to come back to her sharps management presentation. I think we will need to have a slideshow. That was the problem.
Okay.
So in the meantime, I think you can take advantage and just pick up the phone and start dialing so that we can have some two-way interaction in this two-way channel and at least hear your sweet voice and come to know what you're thinking about the program or the material. And I would also request you, because it's very important for you to share, what is happening in your end, how is the waste being managed in your setup. So I think it's very important for you to also interact with us and let us know. So I think I would now request you to kindly let us know as to how we will now continue with our presentation of sharps management in St. Stephen's Hospital. Yeah, Dr. Matthews.
All documented infections of transmission in healthcare personnel, whether it's HIV, hepatitis B or HCV, has been from the sharps, and it is more risky to get a injury from a hollow bore needle rather than a solid needle. Like the solid needles are when you do suturing, the hollow bore needles are the syringes, and with their needles they are hollow. So we have to be very particularly careful how we handle the sharps, and it's important that after you use it, you put it in a puncture-proof container so that even during the time of transport, it doesn't injure anyone. Firstly and foremost, you see wherever you generate the sharp, you put it, you know where it is, and put it in the sharps container. Now, there are certain measures to prevent needle stick injuries. I showed you earlier that we use thermocol at the site of generation of needles. This is only in the immunization clinic because at that point we have a large load. But we do have thermocols also where the nurses are going around giving injections in the ward, because again, as you know, they would be very busy at that time, each time to get to the sharps box to destroy, or sharps needle destroyer to destroy it and dispose it off. Also, it has been proven that capping of needles produces sharps injuries. So it's very important that you all do not recap needles because accidental injuries occur during that time. Also, we put when blood gas samples are going to the blood gas machine, we put it in this rubber bung bottle so that the person transporting it does not get an injury. And as I said again, all containers for disposal should be hard, puncture-proof. Now, in our hospital during a year, 41 sharps injuries were reported, and in conditions where we knew that 2 patients are HIV positive, 2 of the staff were given post-exposure prophylaxis by a doctor who deals with these injuries.
Is there a study which has been done in your hospital as to, you know, if there are sharp injuries and follow-up of these people who have had the injuries, how many of them or have any of them contacted the infection?
It has not been, none of our staff has been contacted infection.
And what about, Dr. Megha, has, according to the statistics in WHO, how many people do you think after sharp injuries, has there been any reports?
There are different studies which show that nurses are the ones who are affected most.
No, it is not the sharp injury, but do they get the infection of these sharp injuries? I don't know whether there is any such...
WHO data is there, no? WHO data that annually so many millions and so many hundred thousands infections of hepatitis B, hepatitis C and HIV. They are on account of needle-stick injuries annually. That WHO data is there. Yeah.
I think the importance is also that we should sensitize staff about this, that they should be aware that injuries can occur, they can get the infection, they have to protect themselves. So raising a level of awareness is very important. We have to be especially concerned about the Safai Karamcharis. Now they are not the ones who are generating the sharps, but if they get injured, it's because we are not disposing it off safely. So an important part of our program is creating awareness, and also each person should try to protect himself against sharps injuries. For maintenance of the needle and syringe destroyer, we have a separate man for maintenance, and if the machine is not working in the ward, the nurse has to see to it that it gets repaired. So they usually have 2 or 3 kept in the store. We have to see at the management level that you have a good supply and maintenance system working. It's not that because the destroyer is not working, things just stop functioning and the whole system collapses. This is the man who is kept specially to see that the machines are repaired. And this is one of the buas from the ward. She's come to collect the repaired one. Now I will go on to the next category of waste, which is the incinerable waste. And in this we have, they all go in the yellow bag. They are the dressings, soiled plaster casts, sanitary pads, cotton, tissue paper, vacuums, body parts and tissues. There is no plastic in the yellow bag. For transport of the infectious waste, we have 3 separate employees who work round the shift, and they are responsible for transporting the yellow bag, the blue bag and the sharps. See, it has come down to the staging area and it is weighed before it is sent to a centralized facility. Our infectious waste we send to a centralized facility for disinfection and incineration. Now we have a hard box which contains all the uncontaminated broken ampules, broken bottles, glass, antibiotic vials and empty glass bottles. These are recycled. And this is the waste staging area with all the recyclable plastics which are non-infected but have been mutilated. The black bag contents are leftover food and general office waste papers. And these are separate people meant for transporting the black bags which go into the dump, which goes to the municipal corporation comes and collects it. And it goes in a rickshaw. Now we are an ISO certified hospital for quality, for environment and for occupational health and safety. So this ISO also covers various aspects of waste management, and since for this certification it occurs every 6 months, so we have an internal and an external audit every 6 months. This also helps us maintain our standards of waste management. We have a policy on mercury. Since 2002, we have created awareness among staff of ill effects of mercury, arranged mercury spill kits in all wards, and we have completely phased out mercury thermometers. This is how mercury is collected when there is a spill in the ward. The nurses have been instructed, they take off their gold rings and they put on a mask, they wear their gloves, and with a cardboard paper they collect the mercury and it is sent to a centralized place in the hospital underwater. so that to prevent it from vaporizing and causing toxicity. This is the collection of mercury spills over a course of a year, and then we have this program which has really been successful because of the sensitivity created among the nurses. We have used approximately 32 needle and syringe destroyers are issued to the ward for the following years, an average of 26 per year, and each cost 1,600 rupees. So cost to the hospital is around 50,000 a year. Bleach consumption is around 24,000, and disinfection with hypochlorite is more expensive when it is bought in cans, whereas the bleach powder is cheaper. So at one point we replaced hypochlorite solution for disinfection with bleach, and that brought the cost down by 3.5 lakhs that year. Now categories of waste treated, it was 51,000 kilograms of incinerable waste, 9,000 autoclaved waste, and 16,000 of chemical disinfection. And the chemical disinfection costs our hospital approximately 5,28,000 a year annually. And financial cost for 2006-2007, this is only for the garbage bags. We spend around 9 lakhs a year. For disinfection, the chemicals we use around 5.5 lakhs. Gloves are given to all the workers, around 27,000. For the needle and syringe destroyers, around 28,000. And we pay 4,20,000 to the centralized facility for the yellow and the blue bag. It's approximately 19 lakhs per year. This is not taking into account the salaries of all the people employed to manage this. Now this is the place where it's all sorted out. You have the gloves and the syringes, and this is what we want to prevent. You can see there is a hole in this glove. This has come as a new glove, and that is why it is important after the use of any of these items which can be just repacked, that we damage them so that there is no way anyone will be tempted to resell them as new. That is why we mutilate our plastics before they go out of the hospital. I think that has covered our management and has given you all an idea of how the different categories of waste, how to segregate it, and I'm sure you can read up more about it in the textbooks which have been provided to you by IGNOU. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ann. I think that was an excellent presentation. I mean, a lot of insight into how actually waste can be managed, and we have seen that it is being managed. So we should learn from her experience and the way they are managing the waste to be able to manage the waste at their small setups or big setups. And now I would request Professor Agarwal, because he has been to many of the countries in which we are tied up and where we are having the study centers. Also he has visited many of the hospitals in India, and I would request him that taking this case study as a baseline and comparing it with what are the facilities which are available in our country as well as abroad, how is the waste being managed effectively. And first I think I would like you to critically just talk about the waste management in St. Stephens, and then vis-a-vis the other places where the waste is being managed, the other hospitals, India and abroad.
Thank you, Ruchika. I think St. Stephens has been doing great job, and you can see from the presentation of Dr. Ann Matthew that they are quite aware of the problem. They are doing it very scientifically, because segregation at the point of generation is the hallmark of the entire process of the waste management. And then they have tied up with a common treatment facility, which is what actually should be encouraged and promoted. So if they are segregating nicely, and if they are giving it to their common treatment facility, then that is really the best way, and that's what we now promote as a modern concept of waste management. And so I must congratulate Dr. Ann Matthew for her excellent presentation, and also that she is also conducting our program in St. Stephens. She is a good program in charge and academic counselor, and she participates in all the activities very seriously, sincerely. Being a pediatrician, busy pediatrician, she spares time for IGNOU program. And the Ruchika also asked me to share what is the scenario internationally and in the country. Yes, I have visited a number of countries in this regard, and we have also seen the hospitals, how the waste is managed there. During the development of this program, we visited initially and held workshops in Nepal and Bangladesh, and also in Indonesia. And you see, the situation is not really good. At least in India, we are the pioneers to have the biomedical waste management handling rules. We are the first country in the Southeast Asian region. But that is, after that, of course, we have Thailand, which has come out with the waste management rules. But other countries are still in the process. They have not adopted. They are formulating that. So the situation is not really very good. What hospitals we see during the last, we have seen during the last 2-3 years in Southeast Asian countries, without naming the country, I would say that somewhere, they are not managing it at all. It's complete chaos. And even in the places where they are segregating at the point of generation, collecting it in the different color bins, and then transporting it. But what happens that at the curb area, the collection area, outside the hospital, or in some corner of the hospital, after segregation they are mixing the segregated and hazardous waste. And as you all know, when you read your booklets, that it is not more than 15 to 20% of the waste which is infectious and hazardous, like sharps, like body parts, like laboratory waste, and these kind of waste. But 80% of the waste is non-hazardous. And if we mix this 15-20% of the hazardous waste with the non-hazardous waste, the whole 100% becomes infectious and hazardous. So that's a very important point, that segregation at the point of generation, at least for those 2-3 categories, that is the infectious, the sharps, and then the non-infectious waste. So the non-infectious waste can be put, in poor countries like that of ours, for a recyclable recycling purposes. So I think, Ruchika, situation still needs improvement. And even when we had the presentation from Mongolia, they were doing open burning in most of the hospitals and in the rural areas, primary health centers. And
I think one of the important
yes.
things when the Mongolian people came was that they are thinking of putting this as a legislation in
yes.
their in ministries, which is, I think, a very important.
Very
and
important.
Our students, because they are from all different walks of life in different organizations, so I think it's very important even from the students to come out that there should be a legislation, that there needs to be a healthcare waste management person in every institution, and guidelines should be laid down, and strictly legally they should be followed. Otherwise we are not
Absolutely,
able
that
to.
is very important actually. And as she pointed out, we are trying that in India at least the Central Pollution Control Board gives this advisory to all the state pollution control board, that every health facility should have at least one trained person in healthcare waste management. Then the other thing is that burning and incineration should be limited to only very highly infectious waste like body parts and certain other cytotoxic drugs, etc. Besides that, and that too, incineration has to be at a very high temperature, because incinerating less than 1000 degree, 800 degree is no good because of the toxic emissions. As you all know, dioxin and furans are the most deadly gases which are not biodegradable so easily. They take years, donkey's years time and they are neurotoxic, they are hepatotoxic, and the ozone depletion effects, whatnot. So environmental and health impacts are very, very serious. So burning should be bare minimum. So we can have the more environment friendly options, like we can put them, dug up the pits as per the specifications. So deep burial is one important way, and then autoclaving, microwaving is the other important way. So this
Look for some solutions.
local
also.
solutions
That
like
is still, yeah,
yes,
solar systems. And
yes, solar heating system or solar, right? I think those are the important.
it needs to, needs innovation in that.
Yes.
I think that is very important, because as Dr. Anne Matthews also study showed that using the thermocol, so innovations are certainly required.
Yes.
And I think now I would request Dr. Abhinav Sood. He is a budding dental surgeon, and I think it's very creditable that at this young age he has taken up this task of not only imbibing the healthcare waste management principles and using it in his setup and motivating the other people to use it, but also he is helping to propagate the idea and the principles. And I think dental is a very, very important area where a lot of toxic waste is generated. The quantum may not be large, but the quality of the waste that is generated is quite hazardous, and it's very important for us to realize, not only as dental surgeons but also as laymen, because we all go to a dental clinic, that how important the healthcare waste management is in a dental setup. So I would request him to give the importance of the waste management in a dental setup and how it needs to be managed.
Thank you very much, madam, and thank you for the opportunity for me to present at this forum. I'll be discussing the biomedical waste management and giving the dental perspective to it. Now, as you have very rightly said that dentistry, even though being an outpatient procedure on predominant basis, and it may not be generating that amount of waste, but that is what the importance is, that the hazardous nature of this waste causes a lot of problems, and that needs to be regulated. Legislations currently are not very stringent, awareness is low, and there is laxity in execution of correct practices. Now there has been a paradigm shift from blatant unregulated waste disposal to regulated and organized biomedical waste management, which does not limit itself to just disposal, but segregation, collection, handling, and correct disposal depending on the waste category. Now, when we look at the dental scenario, the sources include a dental clinic. These may be private, government-run dispensaries, dental teaching institutions and associated hospitals, again in the private and public sector, and also in a very neglected field of dental laboratories, which fabricate for us the prostheses and appliances, and they also are part and parcel of this exercise, in which contaminated impressions which we make in the clinic are sent to them, and they also dispose this waste. And this, being an unregulated sector in our country, unfortunately has to be considered and brought into mainstream in consideration with the waste disposal also. Now the waste generated in a dental field, as we all know, the definition is waste resulting from patient diagnosis, prevention, research and treatment procedures, as well as waste generated from all other healthcare establishments, research facilities and laboratories. Now in the dental field it is equivalent with biomedical waste, and as per the Biomedical Waste Management Handling Rules 1998, all dental health facilities attending to 1,000 patients per month are required to seek authorization from the regulatory authority, which could be the State Pollution Control Board. Now classifying the waste that we handle, it can be both biodegradable, non-biodegradable, and as per the chemical properties, recyclable waste, soil waste, hazardous toxic waste. And I have included this WHO classification because specifically that we also use some pressurized containers and aerosols, which are very commonly used in our dental practice, being the lubricating oils for our equipment maintenance, sprays for checking occlusion, etc. And some centers also use conscious sedation, and any pressurized container should be disposed of very carefully and not subject to any heating procedure, and which can lead to injury of the handling waste handlers. Nitrous oxide, again, the canisters have to be sent back for the manufacturer for recycling. And coming to the classification as per these rules, which are relevant to our scenario, the first being the human anatomical waste, or the category 1, Here we entail pathological waste which is extracted and exfoliated teeth. It's very important and mandatory that we do not include teeth with amalgam restorations in this, because we cannot incinerate amalgam. That will add to the environmental pollution.
You could just explain what is amalgam for the benefit of our many viewers may not be knowing what is
I will be
amalgam.
discussing amalgam and mercury in detail later on, but
Okay.
for the benefit, amalgam is an alloy which has one component being mercury. As a filling material, what we call chandi ki filling normally in common parlance is an alloy, a silver alloy which is mixed with mercury to make a filling material. Now when it is bound, it does not release mercury, but during the procedure of mixing it or triturating it, we handle bulk mercury, and that can be very dangerous, and the way to dispose it off is very vital, which we'll be discussing. So this yellow bag category waste or the category 1 need to be incinerated, and in case of amalgam it cannot be incinerated, it has to go for some deep burial. Coming to the next critical category which relates to us, it's the waste sharps or category 4. Sharps means any sharp or pointed object can penetrate the skin or oral mucosa. In dentistry, what we deal with are hypodermic needles, the hollow bore needles, scalpel blades, disposable scalpels, also orthodontics, which deals with the braces and straightening of teeth. The wires are used. Even the edges of those wires can be very potentially dangerous and can prick. Broken glass, the anesthetic carpules which are used, burrs which we use to grind the teeth, and endodontic instruments, the root canal instruments, the thin needles which are placed to do root canal, which we call files, are also part of this. So these need to be separately placed in a sharps container. Color coding is blue, white or translucent, puncture proof as Madam Dr. Anne Matthews has already discussed, and 1% hypochlorite, and this has to be sent to a center where it will be shredded. Proper handling of sharps is extremely important, especially in the dental scenario. All the intraoral injections which are given, and one-hand recapping as shown in the diagram has to be totally discouraged, because that leads to penetration injuries,
I
accidents.
have one question over here, Dr. Abhinav. We normally, as patients also, when we go to dental surgeons, then a local anesthesia is given to us, which is given naturally through a syringe and needle. Now, many times the patient may require to be injected local anesthesia twice or thrice. So, the dental surgeon normally doesn't dispose of the syringe, with the LA. He keeps the syringe and he recaps it. Now, what is your suggestion from the waste management point of view? Should he dispose of that needle and syringe and use a new needle and syringe for the second time he has to inject the LA, or?
Ma'am, the focus now is changing from using a normal hypodermic syringe like a 2 ml or 5 ml to using glass ampules like 1.8 ml which we get, and instead of recapping by hand, one can just place the cap on the operating table and just place it and reuse. So within a period of time, if they have to re-inject, that is still technically there are no regulations which prevent or discourage the use of re-injection, but of course it cannot be changed.
Even by placing on the table, I think I would like Dr. Anne Matthews to comment that do you think that there are still chances, I think, of sharp injuries if you place the cap on the table and you try to cap it?
No, you
Recap it.
actually you won't get the injury because you put the cap down.
Okay,
So you're not going to get the injury.
okay.
You're going to do it. You shouldn't. But the thing is, the needle tip should not get
Infected,
contaminated.
yeah.
That is
So
very
in
vital.
case it gets contaminated, you
Need to replace the
destroy
needle.
it and replace it.
Then the needle has to be definitely
Definitely replace. But
replaced.
what is shown very clearly, and it's very important, we should not recap.
Recap. Holding in the
Holding the
hand.
hand.
Holding in hand. Yeah.
Right. Then next, the disposal has to be done in a needle destroyer as shown in this diagram, and the needle after being destroyed has to be placed in the sharps container. Coming to the next category of soiled waste. Now in dentistry, again, blood and saliva, which is the other potentially infectious material, which is equally hazardous in our perspective. All the blood and saliva soiled materials have to be in category 6. Gloves, cotton rolls, gauze, impression materials removed from trays, X-ray film covers, RVG sensor covers, intraoral camera protective covers, and all these have to be autoclaved prior to shredding.
What is your OPIM?
It is other potentially infectious material,
Okay.
and saliva is part of it, is considered that. Next category according to the rules Act 98 is the solid waste category, and all the disposable items which are not contaminated are there, and in order to prevent reuse of these, they again have to be autoclaved, put in the red container and shredded. Coming to the chemical waste, we do use a lot of hazardous chemicals, first and foremost being mercury from amalgam. This I'll be discussing in details. Even the radiography developer and fixer, which we use very commonly, each dental setup will be having it, if not completely transferred to digital radiography, will be containing it. Organic solvents are used. Methyl methacrylate monomer is in use on a daily basis for all the denture work and temporary crowns. That is again a very hazardous material which has to be disposed of after dilution. It cannot be just drained off. Etchants, though used in very minimal amounts, again have to be taken care of. Formaldehyde is used. Disinfectants are used. Glutaraldehyde is used for cold sterilization, though not for surface. And regulations are there by OSHA as to controlling how much the ppm in the air has to be there. So it cannot neutralized glutaraldehyde has to be disposed in the drain and not a potent one. Again, chemical treatment and discharge into drains is for liquids in this category, whereas chemical waste in solids, though not very relevant for us, have to be in the black container and placed in secured landfills. Now coming to the management of silver and lead waste. Silver in our scenario is there in the radiographic fixer solutions. This has to be sent to a reclaiming facility for it can be recycled, silver can be extracted, and then they dispose it off. If a small center like an individual clinic cannot do it, then it can be sent and an agreement can be made with any commercial lab, radiology lab, and it can be sent to them. The lead foil in the intraoral radiograph film should be collected and again sent back for licensed facility for recycling. Unfortunately, there is a lot of lacunae in our scenario in India in which there are not such setups which are in the organized sector, but we should look for it, and it certainly for the fixers it is definitely there. The general waste which is generated has to be secured and segregated in the black containers and disposed in secured landfills. Now coming to the most relevant topic for us in dentistry is the mercury in dental health care. Dental amalgam, as I just explained, as you can see in the diagram, is this filling material which is used to remove, to restore the shape and anatomy of a tooth which is destroyed by a cavity. It has been used for time immemorial from 1833, and this survey which shows in America, which was done, that even in America 68% of users have been using amalgam. In India, I can safely say more than 90 to 95% people, dental surgeons, are using it in day-to-day practice. There have been a lot of debates about the concern about health of an individual from an existing amalgam restoration in a patient's mouth, but studies have conclusively proved that an existing amalgam filling in the mouth does not lead to any adverse health effect to that individual. So that is there. There are a lot of evidence to prove that. However, still a lot of countries have entailed legislations restricting and banning complete use of amalgam, dental amalgam. These include Japan, Denmark, Canada, Sweden and Germany. The bottom line is that dental amalgam is safe and it is also indispensable in certain clinical situations. However, it is very important that we take adequate precautions for mercury management, and that has to be the focus. Mercury, as we know, that is undergoes biomagnification. It is there, generated from natural sources, from volcanoes, from industries, pesticides, fungicides. It gets in the food table and in the water sources, fish ingested, methyl mercury is formed, and that gets biomagnified and can come to the human scenario.
You can just explain what is biomagnification also.
Biomagnification means that the increase in concentration of a particular toxic chemical which occurs due to sequences in the food chain. Like if it is to a certain extent in the planktons, it goes into the fish
as we go into the higher trophic levels, because we have the primary producers or the they have less quantity, but
Absolutely.
Since a large number of primary producers are consumed by the secondary producers, so there is an increase in concentration, and over in a food chain, as we go higher up, the higher we go, the more is the concentration. So this is what the biomagnification. So in the lower either the primary consumers or the secondary consumers, it may not be toxic. to them, but in a much higher trophic level it
It can
becomes
reach toxic levels,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Medical waste incinerators contribute a large amount to this. Amalgam is not the only reason. Sphygmomanometers, thermometers have been there, any spills, and if they put in the incinerator, that leads to mercury vapor, and that has to be controlled. Methyl mercury is the highly toxic part of it, and it crosses the blood-brain barrier and can lead to neurological effects. And a lot of evidence in history, Minamata Bay disease is there, and OSHA, or the Occupational Safety Health Administration of USA, has given some mercury vapor limits for dental scenario, and which have to be followed, and air ventilation is vital. Now coming to the type of waste which we generate in a dental clinic, it is scrap amalgam which can have contact with the patient, like from inside the patient's mouth, cotton rolls which have been there with amalgam, derived from removing, finishing new restorations, removing old restorations, and non-contact, whatever has been mixed and not used on the shelf, that remains, used capsules, spilled mercury and amalgam. Then coming to the extracted teeth with amalgam fillings, and amalgam which is collected from the various traps which are used in the equipment. Now for amalgam disposal, three main aspects have to be considered: the amalgam scrap, other waste contaminated with amalgam, and amalgam in waste water which we generate. Now this amalgam scrap has to be placed in a spent radiographic fixer solution in a covered container with a tight lid. It should be recovered and recycled wherever possible. Now a spent radiographic fixer contains silver particles over a period of time after it has fixed a lot of radiographic films, and that silver combines with the free mercury and forms an alloy, and thus makes it less dangerous. Secondly, it also contains sulfide ions which are preservative in the fixer, and that again leads to formation of cinnabar, which is a combination of mercury and sulfide, and that again is relatively safer, and therefore this solution is recommended. If this is not available, water or glycerin can also be used, but it is very vital that an airtight lid should be there on the container so that no mercury vapors are released. It should also not be disposed with any waste that would be incinerated. Coming to other waste contaminated with amalgam, like amalgam capsules, again the similar principles would apply. Now amalgam in wastewater is also very critical. Now in a dental scenario, whatever, if we drill inside the patient mouth, there is always a air water coolant, and lot of water is generated. Now any grinding which is done on an existing amalgam filling mixes with that water and is picked up by the vacuum pump or the suction, and it gets thrown into the effluent which is there in the normal drainage of the clinic. Now this leads to a lot of contamination with mercury which is combined with amalgam and has to be checked.
This
Now
is the water you are talking when the patient rinses the mouth.
that is also part of it.
But then you are saying it's not dangerous to the patient. How does the water get contaminated?
Any filings which are there
Okay.
have been spit out. Strict instructions are given to the patient that they do not have to
Swallow.
that water. Secondly, that amalgam is already a combination of the mercury. It is not plain mercury. It again needs to be checked. Yes, mercury vapor is released if we do finishing and polishing of amalgam without any coolant, because then the temperature is increased and then mercury vapor can be released. But coolants are always used. Now coming to the amalgam in wastewater, chairside traps which are there, dentists have to be more responsible. They have to buy equipment which contains this. Awareness is vital. It is currently highly lacking, and these chairside traps needs to be installed to collect all this amalgam. The diagram on the right figure shows how much amalgam can be collected. Then there is another equipment called amalgam separator. These are devices which are used to remove amalgam waste from the dental office discharge. They can be inline with the chair side or after in the total effluent treatment. Again, something which is totally lacking in our country and needs to be built up. There are some best management practices which are there, how to use amalgam. First and foremost, we should not use bulk mercury. We should use pre-capsulated amalgam alloys. As shown in the diagram, they come pre-packaged and they have to be utilized with an equipment shown below called the amalgamator, so that there is less elemental mercury use, less chances of evaporation of mercury vapor and spillage, and that has to be followed. Again, non-contact amalgam and empty capsules have to be collected as discussed earlier, and they have to be sent back for the recycling. Again, I would emphasize in India this aspect is highly lacking. We do not have an existing infrastructure in place for recycling of amalgam. And I would want to ask Dr. Ann, in her institute, as she has said that all the mercury which is collected, how do they dispose? Because whatever mercury has been collected due to spillages, where does it go?
We have a problem with that, but the last time we had collected actually, Toxic Slink had collected ours.
So that's
So the last collection. Now we've got another, but what they did with it, I think they also needed to just keep it.
yeah,
Because
so
unless people have been talking about like the people who manufacture blood pressure apparatuses, whether they will buy it.
so that is a very relevant point. Such a large
How do you
institution.
extract mercury out of your amalgamators help them do that? Extracting
No, he's
Mercury
talking
can-
of the
Spills also.
Spills
but
also.
what is the
And
best way of
no, spills, yes.
spills? How is there anything that has come up recently
No,
about
as Dr. Matthews was saying, they collect it, and
The-
Toxic Slink is an NGO who's actually in touch with the recyclers and the manufacturing industry. They hand it over to them.
It's
I don't know
recycled.
whether that is there
I
any
don't
other
think
way
they
because
don't, they are not willing to collect from all
Yes.
hospitals.
Not all hospitals.
But I think encapsulation is the other thing.
But then maybe you can
But
have a tie-up with your
there has to be a
manufacturers
limit to
itself.
which, and like I am talking from a dental perspective, we
Yeah.
use it on a daily basis and this occurrence is very high. There is a great need for a infrastructure to come up and
Do
to
you
look
have a
at this
tie-up
need.
with your manufacturers itself? So
No,
that,
no,
you know,
there
they
is
can
nothing.
There
actually
is
know
no
it doesn't
existing setup like that, and that is very critical.
they don't come back and correct it. They won't accept the.
However, there is these amalgam separators in Sri Lanka with the Ministry of Environment of Sri Lanka. There it has started, and these makers of amalgam separators, they come back on a 6 monthly basis,
that's right.
collect that, they recycle it on their own and give a new separator. So that proposal, if it can come through in our country, I think there is a proposal in the Delhi government. How far it comes up would be very
Yeah, Delhi
interesting and
government is
very relevant.
active in that.
Yeah.
We'll check up on how the mercury spills should be managed, because if they are not collected by the, even if it is collected by some NGO, how are they disposing it
Yeah,
off?
that's what she said.
Who is
They collected,
collecting?
but how do they,
So
what
now
do
the
they do
Delhi
with it?
government has come up with this new program where the phasing of mercury for the hospitals.
Yeah.
That's right, but still
But
we have
in
the
dental,
problem.
you'll have to use it in any case.
Yeah, but not even
No,
that.
they must be
I mean,
having some,
Yeah, I will be-
mechanical arrangements.
Yeah, like you were
just
saying that
we have alternative materials which can be used in lieu of
mercury.
dental amalgam, and they are there, but due to socio-economic reasons or convenience, it needs to be there's a huge list of materials,
Okay.
and in most of the countries in Scandinavia they have switched over to these, and that needs to be looked into. Now mercury spills, again madam has also discussed in detail, but very important to wear protective eyewear and mask and never allow mercury to go down the drain. And fresh air is important. Closed air ventilation air conditioners have to be switched off, and it can be used by a stiff paper. Syringe with water can be used to suck the mercury up. Sticky tapes like masking tape or duct tape can be used to pick it up. Fresh mixes of amalgam can be used to pick it up, and commercial cleanup kits are also available. Very good indicator is to sprinkle sulfur powder into it, so that the change in color allows you to know that there is change in there is still so it is coming to the conclusion, it is very important that we as dentists have a set procedure written, a protocol and training of the employees and the healthcare support staff is very mandatory and helpful in following these. And dental surgeons have a huge responsibility to society to undertake this task. With this, I thank you for the opportunity to present.
I think more important than the responsibility that they have, the dental surgeons, to the society, they have to themselves, I think, because they are, this is one area, I think Dr. Ann will agree that dentistry is one area in which the patient is less exposed, and the doctors and the, the staff are more exposed, because they have to deal with the, directly with mercury while making the amalgam, the vaporization and everything, whereas in the other areas of the hospital, it is the patients who are probably also equally prone to get, occupational hazards or suffer the hazards of poorly managed waste. So I think we have had a very excellent presentation, and this dental perspective has not been given separately, in this material, but it has been so nicely, put together and brought out that it is really an eye opener. And I think there are many of the students are dentists, and I think they would have really benefited, and even for people who are not dentists, but because we all, I think, sometime or the other do go to a dentist, and we need to know what are the waste and how it needs to be managed in a dental setup. So with that, I would like to thank Dr. Abhinav and also Dr. Ann Matthews and Dr. Megha, and I would request Professor Agarwal if there's anything you would like to say, tell the viewers that the probable viewers, because that is what we feel.
We wanted to announce the next date for the teleconferencing.
Yeah, we'll check up and put it on the website, I think.
And also inform it to the program in charges that probably we'll have it sometime in May, because June they are having exam. So it will be sometime in the middle May or somewhere. We will try to also seek the convenience of EMPC, but I would only say that we have not had any questions. This is really disappointing.
I think let us have the questions through email, then only we'll inform them the next date of the teleconferencing.
Right, but then I think next teleconferencing probably the students, I think we have not been able to reach to the students with regard to today's teleconferencing. So maybe that we have to follow it up with the program in charges to get in touch. Now especially in the contact program, they should inform the next date for the teleconferencing. And I must thank the guests here on the dais for very good presentation, and I'll again hand it over to Ruchika for concluding it.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Agarwal. I think I would also just like to thank all the experts, and though we didn't have any interaction from the students, but we had good interaction among the experts themselves, and so I think it was a very lively session and a very informative session. So I would like to thank all of you once again, and we would let you know the dates on the website. Thank you.